So they can't get this under control whatsoever, which leads the White House press pool to question her on this idea of illegal immigration. This first question that's being proposed here is from a reporter that we've seen many of times, but she questions Karine Jean-Pierre on the southern border, but also on the idea about Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot complaining about having illegal immigrants bust to her city, her sanctuary city, her right to shelter, as well as Eric Adams. Let's hear it.
Allergy juice are bad this year.
Oh my gosh, the pollen is quite something.
Thank you for the question. So Governor Greg Abbott has said that he will continue sending migrants to Democrat-run cities after Title 42 expires.
Good.
The mayors of Chicago and New York have already responded saying they simply do not have space. What is the administration doing to help state and local governments prepare ahead of the expected influx of migrants?
So look, it's unfortunate that Governor Abbott continues to play politics with migrants and with the American people, because what he's doing, that's what it looks like. It looks like a political stunt instead of trying to address the situation, or maybe get the congressional members and senators that are in his state to actually ask them to work with us on truly dealing with a problem, with trying to figure out how do we deal with immigration reform. Instead of doing that, he wants to play politics. So that's what we've seen from this governor. It's not
Play politics? You're the one playing politics. And by the way, you're going to blame it on Congress once again for, well, they don't have the courage. They don't have basically the cojones to sit there and solve the problem. You had all three branches of government for literally 2 years and you did nothing. You did nothing. Okay? You created this whole mess in the first place. You did nothing. And the question was predicated, what are you going to do to help basically these people that boasted about being sanctuary cities for literally years and years and called Trump a racist for what's going on at the southern border, but now Joe Biden's doing the exact same thing that Trump did, but nobody's going to call Joe Biden a racist. It's remarkable here that she's going to sit there and play these games. Oh, well, they're political pawns because they're busing people where they wanted to go to places that boast about them being sanctuary cities, and now those people can't sit there and take a few thousand illegal aliens, but they expect 11,000 to be inflowed into Texas for them to take care of it and foot the bill. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. It's evil at the end of the day, but it's still remarkable nonetheless.
surprising. That's what he's continued to do. Our administration has been in touch with mayors and local government to see how we can be helpful to them. That has continued over the last several months because Republicans continue to play politics here to put political stunts ahead of actually making change. And if you think about what we've put together, if you think about wanting us to protect put protections for dreamers and farm workers, more immigration judges and asylum officers, more funding for border security, and all of this, which is part of the president's legislation and what we've been urging Congress to act on, what we saw just earlier this week is over 430 business groups wrote to members of Congress calling on them to get this done. 430 businesses have called on Congress to get this done. So this is getting support out there. American people want to see this. Businesses want us to act as well, want Congress to act. And so we're going to continue to do that and to call on Congress, but Republicans are in the way, and Republicans in Congress are getting in the way, and what Abbott is doing does not help.
That is so insane that she has the balls. And by the way, Democrats believe all this stuff that's pouring out of her mouth, this garbage. They actually believe it, that it's Republicans' fault. Literally, the border wall is laying in the desert and they're not willing to build it. They're actually paying people, giving people taxpayer dollars to not build the border wall, to just sit there and hold on to it. Just let it lay there in the sun. It's insane. And then when you have the states, on the state level, Arizona and Texas actually build a makeshift border wall out of shipping containers. You have the EPA come and say, hey, this is federal land. You guys can't do it. It's ruining the environment. In the desert, it's ruining the environment, but it's all Republicans' fault. You're a liar. You're a liar, and everybody sees it. Everybody sees the garbage that's being poured out of your mouth, lady. It's toxic. It's wrong. But hey, we're going to call it out. Nonetheless, we're always going to call it out here on the Ball and Brad Show.
The situation.
I hear what you're saying about immigration reform. I'm not hearing specifics about how you're providing resources to state and local governments to handle the expected influx.
And I have said that
they're literally not, by the way. Eric Adams of New York City literally asked for like $1 billion or some nonsense from the federal government and never got it. The states are literally asking for help. If you look at Texas, because who cares about Chicago and New York City? They did that to themselves. Texas and Arizona, the localities there, are asking the Biden administration to refund them for everything they're having to pay for there on a local level that's being pulled out of their budget for what the Biden administration costs, and they're not getting any response. Years they've been asking for this. They're not getting any response. And by the way, the Biden administration went down to the border and said they would actually secure certain areas of the border for these localities in these states. Haven't done it. They haven't heard back from them in literally years.
We have been in touch with state and local governments to help them in any way that we can. We have done that the past several months, whether it is Chicago, whether it's New York City. We have had extensive conversations, even with the D.C. mayor, on how we can help moving forward.
She's asking for specifics, you knucklehead. Not that I had conversations with somebody. We called them up on the phone. What are the specifics? She doesn't have the specifics in her head, nor does she have them in the binder, because the knucklehead that's running the show called Joe Biden, that doesn't have anything up here, doesn't have the specifics either. Nobody has the specifics because there's nothing there. They aren't doing anything other than making the problem worse.
And again, we're in constant communication, whether it's the White House, whether it's DHS, whether it's FEMA even, and how we can help cities. Every city has their own specific need that they need to address to this issue. And so, yeah, we've been in constant communication. That has happened. And I've talked about it multiple times, whichever mayor is asking for assistance from the federal government.
And then just quickly on the...
What a lie. And I would also like to point out that when you had COVID, that's how far back this goes. When you had the COVID lockdowns, there were still illegal immigrants pouring across the border. And we talked about how literally the Biden administration had to ask the CDC to expand their numbers in terms of what their capacity could be, because the capacity was only at 50%, but they were stuffing people in there like sardines. You had like 250 plus people that were only supposed to be in a pod of like 100. They had like these people crammed in there, and they were begging the CDC, can you please make it 100% capacity because we can't handle all these numbers. So of course the CDC bowed down to them and allowed 100% capacity. And then they ran out of room still. And so they were flying them on planes in the dark of the night to the interior of the country without telling anybody, by the way. We saw security footage of that. Literally an officer walks up to an undocumented plane, no pun intended with undocumented immigrants on the plane, but walking up on the tarmac going, hey, like, why are you guys hiding in, like, literally under the dark of the night? They're not in any light. And the guy goes, yeah, we don't want anybody to know about what we're doing here. We covered that years ago. And she's going to say that we're making political pawns of these people by chauffeuring them the places where they want to go. It's insane. I mean, you can go time and time again. Let's bring up another saying under COVID-19 where literally they were busing these immigrants to the interior of the country, mostly to the local areas in Texas and Arizona. And then what they were doing was they had to sit there and give these illegal aliens COVID-19 basically tests to see if they had it. And guess who was footing the bill for that? It was the localities. And actually had a locality declare an emergency, like a locality state of emergency, if that's what you call it, because they didn't have the funding for it. They couldn't handle it. This is go back years. But hey, the Biden administration is making sure he answers all their questions. Sure. Lady, you haven't answered a question since you've been up there, okay? And not since been up there in the last 24 hours. Since you've literally taken the job, you haven't answered a question. We cover here all the time. And when you do, and maybe it's happened slightly, it's like breaking news. Notify the newspapers. Karine Jean-Pierre actually answered a question. In her mind, you guys, in her crazy mind, and maybe Joe Biden's been rubbing off on her a little bit too much. Maybe, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to get in trouble. It's YouTube, folks. It's YouTube. I got a lot of content I want to say, a lot of funny stuff, but we can't do it here. So I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.